From Wall Street to Main Street, the future of retail investing is AI. Joshua Pantony, CEO and co-founder of Boosted.ai, is going to talk to us about this topic. So once the domain of billion-dollar hedge funds, AI-powered investing tools are now available to individual investors. Josh Pantony will discuss how AI is reshaping the future of retail investing, making advanced strategies accessible to everyone. Now, welcome, Josh.
I'm the CEO of Boosted.ai, and we're at the beginning of one of the largest and most impactful shifts in how people invest and manage their money. And to back that up a little bit, and why I think I have the credentials to talk about that, I've been in the AI space since about 2009. I was the co-founder and CTO of a company called Maluba. We were basically a Siri competitor. We powered LG, Samsung, BlackBerry devices, eventually got bought by Microsoft, and turned into a big part of what's called Copilot. I also did a stint at Bloomberg, where I helped kickstart some of the machine learning efforts there. And a number of years ago, I started this company. We have an AI-powered financial research system that collectively impacts almost $5 trillion in assets across some of the largest asset managers and institutions in the world. And I could spend a lot of time talking about how this has changed professional management. But what I really want to talk about is how this is going to change management everywhere. And to do that, we can kind of take a step back on what the state of the art is today and how the world thinks about things today. If you're a professional investment manager, you're usually spending thousands, up to hundreds of thousands of dollars on very large platforms like the Bloomberg Terminal, S&P, FactSet, systems like this. And classically, these products have been very hard to impact. They had three really big moats that are all getting disrupted all at the same time. Number one, they have huge amounts of data. Bloomberg has a staff of 3,000 to 4,000 people working out of Princeton whose full-time job is basically to go through different types of documents, extract out numbers, put those numbers into a database, and then feed that into a system. We think we can do that job about 99.99% cheaper than that human labor. So the data moat is about to evaporate and is rapidly changing overnight as we think about it. The second biggest note these products have classically had, so if you think about something like the terminal, the Bloomberg Terminal, it has 15,000 screens, all of which have been hand-coded by human coders. They spend almost $1 billion a year on engineering. And again, just focusing on our product, we can replicate most of that capability for about $1 million a year in compute. So you're going from systems that required thousands of human beings, billions of dollars in human engineering, to something that can be done on the order of millions of dollars. That is going to be an absolutely massive shift in the kinds of tools and technology that's available really to everyone. And then the third thing, classically, has been around moat. These firms have in the range of hundreds of thousands of users, and they're considered the industry standard. And that is changing too, because increasingly, you're going to see very large horizontal platforms working their way into the space, and these horizontal platforms bring millions of users. And so the way people have invested and thought about the space for the past 40 years or so is about to rapidly shift and change. And that technology is also being led by a really big shift in how consumers think about the space. Something like 8 out of 10 high net worth young individuals are considered AI proficient. They're actively engaging with it. They expect their advisors, their financial advisors, to be using it, and are increasingly starting to use AI as part of their financial planning and thinking about the world. So I'll say it again. We're in the middle of a once-in-a-generation shift in how investors are spending their time and money. I think the other thing that's happening, and the other thing that's going to be very, very interesting over the next few months, is the way we engage with AI as a whole is about to shift. Classically, over the past few years, which feels classic at this point, we think of AI as a system where you ask a question, and you get an answer. And if you think about how that's evolved, we started with systems where you ask a question, you get an answer. Then we evolved to systems where you gave it a task, it did that task on its own for a little bit, did some research, came back to you with an answer. Where we've traditionally played is semi-autonomous systems. You give it a consistent task, it does that consistent task, and then feeds back results. Where we think it's going to go, though, and where we've built our technology, is a world where you don't even prompt. It just learns who you are, proactively learns the types of things that you care about, feeds suggested actions and insights, and then you interact with those insights. And that's a huge shift. If we think about sort of classic products, a lot of AI today has been very similar to something like Google. You show up, ask a question, and you get an answer. The future is going to be more like YouTube or TikTok. You show up, it has a feed of context and information that it thinks is important to you. As you interact with that feed, it learns more and more what actually matters, and then it gets better at producing high-quality work that you can iterate and use. Querying will still matter, you'll still prompt the system, that doesn't go away, but you're going to move to a world where the AI is effectively fully autonomous, constantly working on your behalf, and constantly finding ways it can be helpful and engage with you. And that's going to be a big, big shift in how things work. And then the other thing is, because the data moats are going away, because the technology around actually building this is getting cheaper, the kind of capabilities that basically everyone's going to have access to are going to be quite different. But maybe enough of me talking about that. Why don't I actually show it? So this is an example of what our product looks like today. You can log in. You can go to our website, Boosted.ai. Anyone here can try it out if you want to. And the first thing you're going to experience when you come in is the system will start talking to you. You'll start learning a little bit about who you are, what you care about, the kinds of stocks you care about, what your goals are, et cetera. And then immediately, it's going to start going out and pushing ideas at you. Now, I have a slight bias to AI. I have a slight bias to AI policy, slight bias to AI companies. So you're going to see a bunch of stuff related to that in my feed. I'm coming in here, and as it's analyzing and doing stuff, it's pushing out different context. And this looks a lot like it's basically doing some kind of news feed or news analysis. But when I actually click into these, each of these are individual agents that are doing work on my behalf. So this one, it's doing a Tesla deep dive. It's looking at the high level. It's looking at geographical exposure. It extracted that directly from a giant, really boring document called the 10Q, pardon me. It's looking at Tesla revenue over time. It's analyzing the bull case and the bear case. In this case, it's analyzing it based on sell-side research. It's going out looking at recent news, recent earnings calls, summarizing relative revenue versus its peers, market cap versus its peers. Slight difference there. And as anything interesting happens in the world, it's going to ping me and let me know. It's going to show up on my homepage. Going in a completely different direction, here's an example of a worker that's going out to different power websites. And it's interacting with those power websites. It's going to those sites, extracting out data, pulling that data back into the sort of centralized location. And then same kind of thing, if there's like a spike in an outage somewhere in the country, if something's changing or matters, it's going to ping me and let me know. Now, this one's a little more idiosyncratic. If you were, a commodity trader or something like that, you might care a lot. But the point is, you can think about almost any kind of complexity and task, and now systems can start to do that. And not only that, this system did this without me even asking. It just figured out cool ways to make my life better in what I'm trying to do on a daily basis, and then started building automations around them. And I think the other really interesting thing about this is how software and what we think about as software is going to change a lot as well. So I just gave you a bunch of examples of, basically like classic analyst white-collar work, right? I'm going out, I'm looking at specific data sets, and then I'm feeding conclusions on behalf of my user. But going in a completely different direction, why not have the agent build full end-to-end software and update me as it's making that full end-to-end software? So this is an example of a screen that's an exact duplicate. So you can't get this, unfortunately, if you sign up, because it is an exact duplicate. But it's an exact duplicate of a function on the Bloomberg terminal. This function on the Bloomberg terminal has a 5-person engineering team that's been working on it for like 20+ years. I managed to reproduce it with effectively a prompt. Going a completely different direction, this absolutely gorgeous piece of 1980s technology is another good example of a replicated Bloomberg terminal. And it looks exactly like this, trust me. And the reason I bring this one up is it's probably one of the most complicated functions on the Bloomberg terminal. This is one that basically goes through a portfolio, looks at different sources of risk, different sources of success, what you'd call performance attribution, and then tells me at a high level what's working and what's not working. Now, you're not going to want to come in here and reproduce a 1980s terminal. I'm just pointing this out because this is probably one of the most complicated pieces of software in the space, and now anyone with a prompt and a screenshot can more or less reproduce it with a minor amount of work. Let's talk about something fun. This is an example of one where I asked it to build, what the heck did I tell it? Cool cyberpunk UI. Cool cyberpunk UI showing off different relative prices between different systems. I just built this because nobody would ever have made this in their, good. No human coder would ever sit down and actually make this because it's kind of useless. But it's a fun example of what you can start to do. Going in a completely different direction, here's an example of a worker that goes to the Nike website, extracts out all the different products on the Nike website, looks at how many of those products are discounted, then goes out to all of Nike's peers, analyzes their websites as well, then looks at the financial ratios for those websites, and then ultimately comes to a conclusion about who's going to do well or poorly this quarter compared to everyone else. And I love showing off this example because if you're someone who only trades shoe stocks, this is ridiculously useful. The problem is there's probably only 10 of you in the world. So this never would have been made before because there wouldn't have been enough ROI on the human coder to actually build this out. But now when we have the ability to build full end-to-end capabilities at a fraction of the cost of what it used to be, suddenly you can unlock these really, really specific user workflows and user needs and requirements. So not only are you entering a world where AI is going to automatically figure out the most valuable thing to be thinking about at any given point in time, but these pieces of software that cost thousands to tens of thousands of dollars a month can now be produced for effectively pennies. And I think that's going to create an absolutely huge shift in the expectations we have from our professionals and sort of create a grounding of the space that's going to be quite unprecedented and unique in history. Yeah, I guess to summarize that, the future of investing isn't going to be about who has the deepest pockets. It's going to be about the best technology. And that technology, increasingly, is going to be available to everyone. Maybe just put this up. I actually blasted through that, so if we want to do a few minutes for Q&A or anything like that, happy to take some questions. Okay, cool. I saw a bunch of hands.
Caught that by surprise. So if you have a question, just keep your hand raised. Make eye contact with me. Okay.
I have a question. I've used the Perplexity finance model, and I found it pretty useful. And I kind of agree with you that models such as this would completely take Bloomberg off.
Yep.
I just wanted to know that is this very customizable? Like how Bloomberg you can create your own screens, etc. Is prompt engineering very easy out here? Yeah,
I literally created each of these screens just by describing what I wanted, right? So I don't know if we want to go through all of them, but literally I'm just putting in an articulation of what I care about, whatever. The other kind of cool thing about this, and I think this is something we're doing that's a little unique, is it's also going to learn about your preferences. Like as you click into things and you view certain things and you don't view other things, as you consume content, not other content, it's actually going to learn, okay, this content matters more, or you prefer this layout style, you prefer, how this thing's thinking in this particular way. And that's also going to be, I think, a big shift. We're one of the first to do it, but that's going to be true of all AI in the future. I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
Another related question is that in Bloomberg, you have access to monitors, where you can have all your different tickers.
Yep.
And you also have live feeds from various exchanges.
Yep.
Where you pay additional subscription costs.
Yep.
You have the same feature out here?
Yeah, so we partner with S&P, we partner with FactSet, we partner with over 30 or 40, some of the largest data vendors. And then in addition to that, we can go out and do our own extraction. So you can do everything you just talked about, but also let's say you were investing in Domino's, you could use our system to go to Baidu Maps, watch how many locations they have in China month over month, and use that to make a prediction about how China revenue is going to grow. Cool.
Was there a question on this side? I think I saw. Okay.
Thinking about the difference between investing and trading, investing being where you're in a position for months or years, and trading where you're in and out in minutes, hours, days.
Yeah.
Could you talk some about how your platform handles those two different approaches?
Yeah, I would say we're much more like investing and less on the trade side. We're actively starting to integrate with certain platforms. I can't talk about who or what yet, but we don't do trade execution in our platform. It's more on the research side. But that would be an evolving area I expect to see over the next, let's say, 1 or 2 quarters.
I'm going to ask you to step out of your comfort zone and
Fire.
To pivot up what he just asked about. Do you think the algorithmic trading, the HFTs, are threatened by this AI wave at all?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's a bit nuanced. So I think about it in terms of time horizons. If you get down to like nanoseconds, like those big market movers, Citadel, that business is fine. They have to do very weird hardware level things that the rest of us are not going to build the infrastructure for. I think the biggest impact here, though, is in long-term investing. So classically, like machines really struggled with thinking about stocks a year out, 2 years out, 3 years out, because there's this non-stationarity problem where like the underlying data, there's not enough rich data to learn from, classically. What we've done with new AI is suddenly it can look at all context of all human knowledge, and it's able to compete with that human thinking in the way that you just kind of couldn't before. So high-frequency trading, probably not impacted for a while. Our stuff runs in the order of seconds, not nanoseconds. But it'll probably come there eventually, too. It's just, how does everything speed up, et cetera?
We have a question in the center. Is that in the center here?
Working. Hello? Yeah, okay, this is working. Okay, so just to kind of build on this, what are the limits of the platform? So do you work with blockchain data? Does it affect crypto?
Yeah, there's some crypto stuff on there. Like we've been primarily focused on public equities, primarily because there's like an ocean of data related to private equities. But if you want to come in and use it to analyze crypto, options, macro, whatever, all stuff you can do.
Question in the center.
Hey, Josh, thanks for a great talk. My neighbors are executives at Raymond James, so we signed up with them, and they gave me and my wife like a booklet of load funds that they recommended for us, which I didn't bother reading because it's like, but it feels to me like what Raymond James sells partly is just the ability to like listen to you on a Sunday and just, remember your kids' birthdays.
Yep.
How do you imagine Alpha changing that relationship between like a Raymond James and their younger clients who may not read through that pack of Mylar, reports on the funds they're selling us?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with that dynamic is, I have a financial analyst as well, a financial advisor as well, and it's really a psychology thing, right? Like March 2020, when my portfolio dropped 20%, it was nice having a human being I could yell at. That's something you don't get in a purely AI-driven product. That said, I do think there's a shift. I think, the perspective, at least of my parents, was this is a professionals game, I'm going to leave it to professionals. I think in the past few years, you've started to see more of the younger generation engage and be a little more active in it. And I think the other thing that's happening is like this is going to be one of, by far, the most savvy generations ever. And so the expectations on where you come from is just going to be very, very different. I mean, for me, when I was trying to find a financial advisor, I interviewed like 60, and 58 didn't know what a Sharpe ratio was. That was hugely problematic to me. And the one that I ended up hiring actually had been an ex-hedge fund guy who wanted to go back to the real space. And so when you actually look at the level of capability of most financial analysts, it's actually not as high as you might think. And I think the bar for what they're going to need to do to continue to perform in the new world is just going to go higher because there's going to be so much information everyone has access to. So they're going to have to find ways to adapt as well, I think.
Do you see a future where Raymond James uses Alpha to educate and interact with their clients?
Yeah, so we have a number of large wirehouses that are using us today. It's all, generally speaking, through more of a white label relationship, so I can't fully talk about the names. But yeah, that's absolutely going to be a common thing, and that'll become, I think, more common as the world evolves.
So we have time for two more questions. One is this gentleman here, and the last question will be on this side.
Josh, could you talk more about your pricing? And also you hinted a bit about the automations, about coming up with searching for, I forget, Nike shoes and how they were doing a very esoteric request.
Yep.
Talk more about how you anticipate building those automations so they're not complex for people.
Yeah, so I think that's probably one of the most interesting things about recontemplating this in a retail environment. Is generally with professionals, they're used to huge amounts of complexity. When you're trying to repackage it for like more of the general public, you have to think about simple, fast, bite-sized consumption. I guess really quickly on pricing, anyone can sign up for free and get a direct access to it. Fundamentally, the way the product works is once you hit a certain amount of usage per month, in the range of tens of millions of tokens, we'll start to scale you up. We'll know you're a professional because those users consume billions of tokens per month per user. Your average general public person is more in the range of tens of millions. So go try it out. There's no price at all to sign up. And then on the second question, this is why we think experiences like this are very important. This is bite-sized, easy to consume. Anyone can consume it. And then once you engage with the content, that's where you start to see very different ways of producing that content. So as I'm relatively sophisticated, there's a lot of stuff I'm doing, but as you interact with the system, it's going to learn more and more about your preferences, and it'll get more simplified if that's the kind of thing you're interacting with more complex, more details, et cetera, if that's the kind of thing you're interacting with more. But everyone gets the same kind of like base homepage you can consume, and the same base prompt system you can interact with.
Hey, Josh, how are you? Thank you for your talk. I have a question about adding up to the last two questions about education and retail investors, especially younger retail investors. The complexity you can achieve with Alpha, I assume it's tied to the user and the complexity you can use. You showed some examples of dashboards mimicking Bloomberg terminals and stuff. But what about the younger generation that are just getting into investing that might not know those dashboards, might have never had access to those dashboards? How does the platform educate the user? For example, the Nike example you showed. Let's say I invest in shoe companies.
Yep.
But I might not have a clue on creating a dashboard about tracking different prices of different companies.
Yep.
Does Alpha educate the end user? Do you add up on that, on the education, the complexity?
Yep.
Or is it a limit of the user of what they can achieve?
So the way the system works, and it can be a little non-intuitive because it's different how other AI platforms work, but when you come in, Alpha will actually start talking to you. It's really hard to do on stage. Go try it out. It'll literally have a voice conversation with you, and it'll have a conversation, and it'll ask you questions. What are you trying to do? What are your objectives? It'll try to build out a watch list of stocks or securities or things that you care about. And then after it's had a conversation, it's got to guess about your sophistication. It's got to guess about what you care about, what matters. Then it's going to start populating your homepage. And that's how the sort of education flows through. And then from there, it really is just like a TikTok experience. Like I like this, I don't like this, I'm clicking, I'm not clicking, and then it just gets better as time goes on.
All that, I think I want to go try it out. So thank you, Josh, for giving us a view of retailing, how AI is going to work for individual investors. Thank you.
Thank you.